Welcome to the Social Dig, the greatest underrated show in the World Wide Web. I am your host, Mr. Rob G. And as always, we're going to be digging into the topics to keep you talking and the talk that keeps you thinking. So come on in, kick your feet up, get an ice cold beverage and get ready to join the conversation. Glad to be back. Glad to see you guys back here. We got some things going on today. We got a few stories, so we're going to be jumping into talking about UFOs and consciousness. It's a crazy subject when you try to wrap your mind around what consciousness is. We know nobody knows for sure. Even the top neurologists look into this, and they have no clue. It's a science that's still being worked out, and we're going to go over some theories, though, based on ufology references. So I know there's some experiences out there, and I know consciousness ties into a lot of our conversations. So it'll be fun to see what you guys think about consciousness and how it plays into maybe an experience that you had. But let me go ahead and bring in our guy, the man of the hour, the engineer at the Social Dig, Mr. Mateo. How you doing, sir?
How you doing, my brother? I mean, you're the man of the hour, my friend, not me. But good to be here as always. Looking forward to the show.
Yeah. You know, we just were on the other day, and actually we got some new subscribers. Came over from David Divine Broadcasted. So I want to welcome the subscribers that we received from David Divine and give a shout out to his YouTube channel as well. Definitely doing excellent work over there. And it was recommended by one of our family members there, Cashew. So appreciate you, Cashew. And let's go ahead and look out and see if we have any. Oh, we have Maggie M10 in the building. Hello, Maggie. So what we're going to do, we're going to kind of take it slow today. I want to get into talking about it, and I actually have a clip from the Apollo 14 astronaut Gordon. I don't remember his last. Dr. Gordon Cooper.
You mean, Gordon Cooper wasn't the Apollo astronaut.
Apollo 14.
Edgar Mitchell.
Dr. Edgar Mitchell. Because he actually speaks about consciousness, and
yes,
he's really deep in the subject. I watched some of his work and I was just amazed. So we're gonna allow him to speak to get us going with the science part of it. Then we're gonna jump into the ufology theory aspect as well.
Awesome.
So with that being said, let's go ahead and get this show on the road. This show may not go as long today. We may go for about an hour and a half. That's what we're shooting for. But let's go ahead and get it going with the disclosure news. All right, disclosure news. Topic for our disclosure news today, or the story we're running with, is lawmakers demand answers on UFOs. As we're getting closer and closer to the UFO hearing is coming up here on Wednesday. Haven't decided if we're going to live stream it. I may simulcast it like we do some of those other events, but haven't decided on that yet. But what we're going to jump into, there was an article by The Hill, and I want to go ahead and touch on that. And let's see here. Let me go ahead and read this to you guys. All right, so it's Frustrated Lawmakers Demand Answers on UFOs by Alexander Bolton at The Hill. So senior lawmakers are increasingly demanding that military and other government officials provide them with information about intelligence on unidentified flying objects or unidentified aerial phenomena. The demand reflects frustrations on the part of some lawmakers that they are being kept in the dark about what's known about UFOs and UAPs. The lawmakers do not necessarily believe the government is hiding signs of extraterrestrial life from the public and congressional oversight, but they are frustrated that they are not learning more about the unknown objects flying in restricted U.S. airspace. My primary interest in this topic is if there are objects operating over restricted airspace, it's not ours, and we don't know whose it is. That's a problem that we need to get to the bottom of, said Senator Marco Rubio, vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. If there's an explanation for it that's being kept from the Congress, then we need to force the issue. We're not getting answers, Rubio told The Hill. The Senate has adopted an amendment to an annual defense bill that would require the federal government to collect and disclose all records related to UFOs and UAPs unless a special review board determines they must be kept classified. The amendment was sponsored by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Mike Rounds, a member of the Senate Armed Services and Intelligence Committees, and is backed by Rubio and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, the chairwoman of the Armed Services Committee on Emerging Threats, as well as Senator Todd Young, a former Marine intelligence officer, and Martin Heinrich. Rubio, the top-ranking Republican on the Intelligence Committee, has more access to classified information than the vast majority of lawmakers on Capitol Hill. He said he suspects these are records related to unidentified aerial phenomenon that are being kept secret from congressional oversight. Right now, what I know is reliable people tell us that we've seen objects operating over restricted military and national security airspace. They claim it's not ours. They claim they don't know whose it is. That's like the definition of a national security threat, he said. Either there's an answer that exists and is not being provided, or there is no answer. Beyond that, I don't want to speculate anything, he added. Rubio said he was familiar with the claims of David Grush, a career intelligence officer who worked for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. He claims the federal government has retrieved non-human origin technical vehicles that have landed or crashed on Earth. We have a number of people, including that gentleman, who have come forward both publicly and privately to make claims, Rubio said. One of the two things are true. Either A, they're telling us the truth or some version of the truth, or B, we have a bunch of people with high security clearances and really important jobs in our government are nuts. Both are a problem. And I'm not accusing these people of being nuts. That said, that's something we'll look at and continue to look at seriously, he said. Interest in the subject is also reflected by this week's House Oversight Committee hearing Thursday on UAP and UFOs. Rep. Tim Burchett, who is chairing the hearing, says lawmakers will hear testimony from Grush, as well as former Navy Commander David Fravor and former Navy pilot Ryan Graves. Burchett claimed on a podcast this month that the federal government has known about UFOs for decades, and they can, quote, fly underwater and don't show a heat trail, appearing to defy the laws of physics. Congressional sources familiar with efforts to gain more information from the Defense Department and intelligence agencies say UAP and UFOs are being detected more frequently because of improvements in military sensor technology. The Department of Defense released 3 Navy videos in 2020 that show objects flying in extraordinary ways and capturing confused and awestruck comments of naval aviators who witnessed the phenomena. Grush, who describes himself as a whistleblower, says senior intelligence officers have told them they participated in a secret UAP task force, though he says he has not personally witnessed non-human intelligence. He says he was retaliated against when he tried to gain more information about the program. Rubio said, "We don't know if such a program exists and what evidence it might have collected." Without speculating or adding to intrigue about this whole topic, there's no doubt that in this field, generally, there's more than what we know, he said. We're trying to get to a process where at least some of the people in Congress do know. Asked why he suspects there's more from Congress to know about UAPs, Rubio said, there's pieces of the puzzle that don't fit. Most certainly, there are elements of things, whether historic or current, that potentially Congress has not been kept fully informed of, and that would be a problem, he said. There's really no function of the executive that should require congressional oversight at some level. The language in the Senate defense bill would require the National Archives and Records Administration to create a collection of records related to UAP across government agencies that would be declassified for public use. UAPs generate a lot of curiosity for many Americans, and with that curiosity sometimes comes misinformation, Schumer said Tuesday on the Senate floor. Most lawmakers are extremely reluctant to say they suspect aliens from other solar systems are visiting Earth because there isn't any undisputable evidence of such visits in the public domain. Also, the nearest star to the planet Earth is 40,000 billion kilometers away, making it seem impossible that any alien craft could travel the distance necessary to span solar systems. The nearest star, Proxima Centauri, is so far away that it would take the Voyager 1 spacecraft, which travels at 17.3 kilometers per second, 73,000 years to reach it, according to NASA. It's also hard to fathom that a foreign adversary such as China possesses such advanced technology that it can fly aerial vehicles in ways that appear to defy the laws of physics, as U.S. military personnel have observed of UFOs and UAP. Round says he has seen no evidence personally that extraterrestrial craft are visiting the planet, but said, I know there's a lot of people that have questions about it. It's just like with JFK in the 1963 assassination, we set up separate archive for that or central collection place for all that data, which I think gave American people a sense of security. There was a location where it was being held. This is following that same approach, he said. The White House announced late last month that the National Archives had concluded its review of documents related to the assassination of former President Kennedy and that the 99% of the relevant records have been made publicly available. Asked about whether he personally believes military personnel and censors are encountering extraterrestrial visitors, Round said, I don't think you can discount the possibility just simply because of the size of the universe. I don't think anybody should say that they know for certain either way, he said. If we simply refuse to acknowledge there's even a remote possibility, then we're probably not being honest. Some of the items we simply can't explain, he said, of the naval videos of UAPs. So, with that story from the Hill, Mateo, how you feeling about that?
I like it. And here's the thing about Marco Rubio. He is being very, very measured, as you can see, in every one of his responses to this. He's got to be careful, but he brings up very valid points. He talks about how it either is true or we've got a whole bunch of crazy people in very high security clearance positions. He doesn't have irrefutable evidence yet, but he's had people come to him, and we've heard in previous interviews with him on News Nation that he talked about how they've been talking to people for 2 years, right? 2 years, besides Grush coming forward recently. And he's not only on the Senate, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, he's part of the Gang of Eight. So he's, if as the article said and you read, he has a very high clearance, and he's getting to see things that our favorite reps in the House, Burchett and Luna and everyone else, don't get to see. So Rubio knows something. And I think if there wasn't any smoke, he wouldn't be pushing it any further. He's being very measured and careful in what he's saying. And I think he's going to keep pushing and moving toward it because there's something there. That's my take.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I looked at, and I understand why he's doing it, but he's a little non-committal on the extraterrestrial side, at least publicly in the press, and I think that's a good move because he kind of wants to stay neutral in the eyes of the press or the public opinion. Because if you look at Burchett, obviously Burchett is pretty much all in and calling it all out. And the side effect of that is that the press calls him a believer, and that's kind of how the public looks at him too. The public
Mm,
not within ufology. So I'm glad, it even though I know Rubio does understand and believes that this stuff is going on, he's still taking a more the middle of the road approach when presenting the information to the press, which I think is the right move.
yes. And one
Um,
other quick point, another bipartisan player whom we hadn't heard from before, Senator Mike Round from New York. So, we have Schumer, we've got Mike Round. Excuse me, Mike Round is the Republican. So Mike Round and Schumer sponsored the bill, right? The bill that had all of the amendment to the NDAA that had all of the strong language in it about how they wanted to form the committee of 9 people to declassify all the UAP stuff. So this article mentions Mike Round, who's the Republican who partnered with Schumer, who was the Dem who made the bill. So that was news to me. Of course, Rubio's Republican, Florida, but point is he's not alone, and Burchett's not alone, right? So Burchett's not alone, even though he may be getting classified as a believer, tinfoil hat, whatever the press wants to do to him. He's far from alone. They can't all be. I don't. I personally feel that the Congress, with all these very serious people in it, are going to jeopardize their careers chasing ghosts, right? So
right.
anyhow, that's my just an added point there.
And to when you speak about jeopardizing careers, so there, if you've ever seen it, I'm sure if you've been in ufology for any point in time, you've seen the video that's been leaking around on the internet for as long as I know. I want to say maybe 15, 20 years, with the purporting to be an alien interrogation video. And I don't, this has been floating around lately. I know I've seen other shows have presented this video and talked about it. Well, the podcast Redacted actually came with the story today, and we kind of want to just play some of it and then give you our opinions on what it is that could be going on here, and just not sure. So let us know what you think. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first few minutes of this, and we'll kind of skip around. This is fair use as well, so it's going to be used for critique and commentary. So let's take a look real quick. Let me know what you think.
Well, to an exclusive report now here at Redacted. The film that you are about to see is jaw-dropping, and it was passed over by the New York Times. The New York Times had an opportunity to run this story, and they didn't. And we are here now at Redacted going to run this story. We're going to show you this unbelievable film in just a moment. But what's more astonishing, however, might be the cover-up and the secrecy of this top-secret film. My guest today is Jon Stewart, former candidate for Illinois governor and U.S. Congress. He spent more than 5 years investigating, proving the provenance of this alleged film, this top secret film, which we're about to show you, and which you are about to see. And it purportedly shows an alien, an extraterrestrial, biological entity being interrogated at the S2 facility in 1997 by members of the U.S. military. Yes, an alien creature being interrogated by members of the U.S. military. And just a few weeks ago, our guest, Jon Stewart, hand-delivered his entire investigation to Congressman Tim Burchett's office. And he's become the first non-government civilian to submit a report to the United States Congress regarding the extraterrestrial phenomenon.
We'll pause right there for a moment. So apparently, as you just heard, this is going to be presented to Tim Burchett ahead of this hearing that we have coming up. So keep that in mind. We're going to look at the video in just a second here, but I wanted to stop and kind of just point that out in case you didn't catch it. But here we go.
And Jon joins us now. Jon, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here on Redacted.
You, Clayton, it's an honor, and it's an honor at any time anyone is willing to listen to this bizarre and incredible journey and investigation. And I am honored to be on your show and able to tell your viewers and listeners my journey and expose without a doubt the greatest cover up in human history.
So we're going to show this film in a minute, and it's about 2 minutes and 57 seconds long, this film from 1997. We're going to walk through it, and you're going to explain to our viewers exactly what we're seeing. But I do want to provide some context here on how this film came to be, how you got your hands on this film, and the cover-up surrounding this film. So how did you first learn about this interrogation that took place at 1997 at the S2 facility?
Like most people back in 1997, this was part of, or this was a documentary that came out, and I was living this baller lifestyle. I had a black Porsche, a powerboat on Lake Michigan, living in the 36th floor of one of the hottest real estate markets and areas in Chicago, and I say that not to impress anybody, but to impress upon people. I go to sit down and watch this documentary, thinking alien interview. This is going to be like a weird humanoid looking person handing a clipboard over to a general at the Pentagon for a job interview. I mean, this is how my brain was thinking. And I'm sitting down, and in 30 minutes into this documentary, this footage comes on. It's not professionally done. It doesn't have any cuts. There's people in the foreshadow. This gray alien is bone color, bone, like human bone. It's got round eyes, not almond shaped eyes. If I'm hoaxing a video of a gray alien, it's going to be gray, and it's going to have the typical almond eyes. And this bizarre physiological monitor next to the beam that goes up and down and not across the screen. And then Victor, the alleged whistleblower who claimed to have helped smuggle this out of Area 51, that's the way insiders talk of Area 51. And I had a psychologist tell me that I've probably encountered 10,000 people in my life with wrestling and in the automobile industry and in politics. I've never heard anyone this intelligent in my life, and I don't think a 23-year-old screenwriter in 96 could have made up this script that Victor was talking about. I mean, the vernacular he used was bizarre, and he used a term called medical flagging. The creature starts to medically flag. And I asked my old doctor, who was about 65 years old at the time in 97, on my annual checkup. I said, "What is medically flagging?" He looked at me. He goes, "Where did you hear that from? That's like a army medical term we used in the 50s and 60s." I'm like, "Wait a minute, what is going on here?" And then there was some weird an acronym on the bottom, DNI, David November Igloo slash 27. And Victor tells us that was the Department of Naval Intelligence. So I run for Congress 2 years later with this film in the back of my mind going, what is going on here? And I don't want to say his name anymore because I'm getting admonished for doing so, but I was on a political bus tour, and I went up to a senator during a break, and who has passed away now. And I said, "Senator, what is the Department of Naval Intelligence?" And Clayton, you look in my eyes. This guy went from jovial, happy senator to this aggressive look. And he looked at me, he goes, "You don't need to know anything about that." And he stormed off, and he never talked to me the rest of the tour, which was a weekend. And I'm thinking to myself, and Clayton, you're a journalist. You're not.
So just so you know, they're about to show the video that he's talking about in just a moment. And I want you to ring in the chat if you've seen this video before. It should be coming right up here.
Investigative reporter too. I'm thinking, wait a minute. I got a hoaxed video with medical terminology from 50s and 60s. I've got a gray alien that's tan and round eyes, medical staff that are in short sleeve scrubs and not in biohazard suits to really hype up the video. I've got a monitor that I have never seen in 35 years of my life back then. And I've got three letters on this hoaxed video that has just pissed off a United States senator. What in God's name is going on with this film?
I think we probably we've let our audience wait long enough, but I absolutely wanted to
Absolutely.
provide the deep context on this film, so that you're not just watching this film without any context and knowing the names of the individuals who were in the room, people who were there at the time, and the verification of that, all of that processing there. The New York Times piece of this, them saying, "We believe you, we believe the veracity of this." So you have all of that. Now, let's play the film. So here it is. This is, again, it's silence. There's no audio on this. What are we looking at here as we play this film? What are we seeing on our screen, John?
Okay. Contrary to Victor's voiceover, this is a film shot April of 1991, a thought projection interview of a other gray, designated an other gray, an extraterrestrial biological entity. He is a haploid, which means he came with only one sexual chromosome. Human beings are diploids. For any microbiologists out there, if I'm hatcheting those words, I'm sorry. But this being had only one sexual chromosome. He came to the S2 alpha, the official designation of the underground facility that housed the alien interrogation and retention program. That's the unofficial name of what this was. They call these interview suites the ambassador suites because the government did try for the care and did treat these and look at these beings and still do as ambassadors from other planets and other dimensions. And if you hear David Grush coughing on his words, it's because he doesn't want to tell you that some of these beings are from other dimensions. And so this being was very ill at the time. He had a respiratory issue. Now, Sean David Morton also heard. I can't verify this veracity, that it's some sort of debilitation or disease with its heart lung sac. It does not have a traditional heart. It's got a heart lung one sac, which was the need for the special monitor, which goes up and down, does not go across, to monitor this bizarre heart lung one sac organ that the alien has. And behind the viewing glass were five men, two telepaths. There is a researcher out there, and I don't doubt it. And because I've seen the outline of the figure, and I didn't catch this, and someone else did, so I'm crediting them. I don't ever want to not credit other people, that Colin Powell was in that interview room. Now, I know that sounds crazy. I can't verify it, but it certainly looks like the outline of him. It looks like an African American male in his 50s wearing an Army Class A dress uniform.
What?
Well, Colin Powell was Secretary of Defense, right? So,
But he said it looked like because he saw the silhouette of that. Okay, okay, we're gonna let it go some more.
well, yeah, we don't
But
know. I mean, that's a stretch, you know.
that's a stretch. That's a
Yeah, I
stretch
mean, how many
to
people
actually
can match
name a
that?
name
Well, I
and
guess he had heard
exactly
Colin Powell's in there, so he assumed if he sees an African American in there, he's going to presume it was him. But
African American with the suit on with
with a suit on, with the
yeah
uniform on.
yeah. Come on, let's go.
Funny, the Rear Admiral that was on my list was the person that reported intelligence to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Interesting. But that's how bizarre this film has gotten. And I'm not even going to tell you anything about the telepaths because I don't want it to get into the Da Vinci Code. But even Doty said that the telepathic program, the people they hired, was ridiculous. They were like one step above 1-800 psychics back in the 80s and 90s. But there was two men in particular that were very in touch with these beings, and they would sit down with these aliens and these beings and immediately get information and relate it back to whatever military person was in the room. As you can see on the tape, the being eventually starts to medically flag, if I can use the whistleblower Victor's terminology, and he is then attended to by the medical staff. And Victor tells us that the medical staff in S2 and S4, are more chosen for their ability to keep secrets than their medical knowledge. And again, I have been in contact. I have the names of the two doctors that are going to be on either side of this beam. On the bottom, you're going to see DNI/27. That is the Department of Naval Intelligence. According to Richard Doty, there's like a conga line of different agencies waiting to insert their questions to this being in the 2-hour long interview. The interviews are conducted about once once a month.
What did you start to piece together from people who were in the room? And so when we say hoaxed video, I think you're saying that that was what the assumption you had going into this, that this was hoax. That was sort of the media speculation about this. Now you've proven and taken it to the United States Congress, which, by the way, they're about to hold a hearing on this next week. And I think that this is, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be a big piece of this. And other whistleblowers are now confirmed to be coming forward to Congress next week, civilian whistleblowers who are going to be testifying of the things that they've been a part of and seen. So talk about the people that you started, the witnesses who were in the room with this creature, and how you started to verify the veracity of this film.
Okay, guys. So we're having the hearing coming up, and you just heard him say for the second time since we've been watching this video that this information may be presented at the upcoming hearing. So I'm going to play, this is too long. I'm going to hop to another part of this video as we kind of point some things out here. I want to say, yeah, it's right about here.
Ignore the commercial.
Basically said, if you got this wrong, nothing changes. If you're right about this list, this changes everything. And then I called Richard Doty and I said, Mr. Doty,
Richard Doty. Richard Doty. He's basing information off of Richard Doty. Continue. We'll go a couple more minutes with this.
he finally got a hold of me. Very nice man to me. Very personable. Hi, Richard. My name is John Stewart. Do you know anything about the Victor film? Yes, I do. I know some things about it. I'm like, wow. Okay. Deep breath. Was it real? Yes, it was real. I'm like, it real meaning it showed an actual off-planet extraterrestrial alien being. Yes. And I said, okay. Do you know who Victor is? He said, no. But there was a very disgruntled bunch of people down in S2 and in S4, the other facility. And these disgruntled employees, Victor being one of them, help remove the tape. And I will tell everyone here, Victor, who kind of said he removed the tape, didn't. It was simply taken out of the S2 facility by the Air Force cameraman, and 2 copies were made at the Area 51 Groom Lake Photo Lab. And the second copy, the 3-minute film, was smuggled out in a GSA burn bag. That's how it left. Nothing's, there was no kind of like smuggling like a mule over the American border with drugs. And I mean, it was let out almost like an Ocean's 11. And Doty said that it was not filmed in S4. There are no alien housing there. The alien housing is in S2 Alpha. And I'm like, what's S2 Alpha? He sent me a satellite photo of it and said, that's what it is. It's called the Alien Retention Program. This being was brought in on a part of Project Pounce. Doty's like, I don't know the provenance of the being, but I think it was from the Kalahari crash where 2 beings were recovered. And he said, but the entire project has been moved to Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, where they have now a huge super secret underground facility. S2, S3, S4 are still in kind of a caretaker status, but the alien program, whether that be the retention, the interrogation, the biological reverse engineering of craft, that all is now taking place at Michaels Airfield at the Dugway Proving Grounds. And
Okay, I think that's all we need to see of that. So I'll just ask the chat.
Ask the chat.
Chat, what do you think about the story that you just partook in here? What do you think about that? This story right here may be presented in front of the Senate at the upcoming hearing. What do you think about that?
I see some responses from Christine and from Tom King there.
Where are we at? Let me see.
Yeah, I'll give you my take, Rob, and everybody can see if they resonate with my position. There's, first of all, John Stewart, albeit a former professional wrestler, and as he stated, living the high life. He he seems to have taken this seriously and done a serious investigation. Now, getting confirmation from Richard Doty, we all have to be careful with that, right? We all know Richard Doty, as Tom pointed out, he totally blew it on the Phoenix Lights. Richard Doty was once a strict disinformation agent, and he really did a bad thing to the UFO community. Now he's come out in an attempt to redeem himself, and he says a lot of things matter of fact, and people believe him. Is he, like he told this guy John here, was that real video? Oh yes, it's real. Yeah, I'm with you. I feel it. I feel the pain that you're feeling. It's tough, and I think a lot of our viewers are too. But yeah, and then there's some history with this video of it being deemed a hoax 20 years ago, for crying out loud, right? So I'm not
Yeah.
sure where to go with it. I just feel like what John did, vetting some of the people who were there. He does talk in the interview about talking to the wife of the guy who was trying to help the alien breathe, who turned out to be a pulmonologist. That's it'd be hard for him to make that up. I don't think he'd want to, and we'll see. I mean, and to the point about it being brought up to Burchett, I don't think they're going to bring this up in the hearing. This is my personal opinion. It's too risky. Burchett, I think, knows better than to bring this up without thoroughly vetting it. And in the end, we may find out if this is true or false. But you
So
definitely do not want to put this up in the because that's
right, and that's my point. You would hope that Burchett is
yeah,
has the right mind to not show anyone the video. Now, only saying that only because the video has been out in the UFO community for a very long time. A lot of different people have reviewed this video and looked at this video. I can't think of one time where I've heard anyone feel like the video was authentic. And the problem that I have with it is that you have a Rick Doty who, if according to the what we just watched, seemed to be one of the real driving points in uh, getting the gentleman to feel and understand that maybe the video is real. And he gave him all this extra information about where they house these aliens, where the retention center is, and all these different things. And we know just based on Doty's own words and history that there's been a lot of misinformation that's come from that way. So I would hate for the guy himself to be misled by Doty, especially if he's riding on those statements made by Doty as 80% of the reason why he's coming out to say that this video is real. Because if it is disinformation, then you are looking at another victim then of Doty's misinformation, and that would be unfortunate.
yeah,
And it would
that could
be
hurt.
even more unfortunate for that information to be presented at this upcoming hearing. We already know that the people who don't want this coming out are trying different things in the background leading up to this hearing. We talked about it the other day. So, you have to look at this and think, could this be one of those things that they're trying to do to derail this? I can tell you that if the video isn't real and Burchett does show it, that it's definitely going to affect how the Senate looks at, and they won't take Burchett seriously any longer at that point.
You're
So,
absolutely right. I want to reinforce what we talked about earlier about the article from The Hill and what I said about Marco Rubio. He's being careful and very taking baby steps on this. If Burchett bites on this story and presents it and it's wrong, that could take down everybody. I don't care. It could take down the whole effort, and that's what you're trying to say, Rob.
yeah, yeah.
It could
Now,
take down the whole effort because if Burchett gets made out to be a fool because he assumed this was true, then everything he's done up until now, although this is completely false, everything he's done up to now is garbage, which is what will end up happening to him. So I personally think Burchett knows what time it is, and he
I
knows that
hope so.
people like Richard Doty have to be careful. And it seems like Burchett loves to give credibility to military veterans who are legit. Now, Doty was kind of part of an asset to the military, but he was purely a more of an intelligence person. And Richard, I don't think Tim Burchett's going to take everything he has to say immediately. And maybe Tim Burchett has some advisors who are telling him, you know what, this guy was once a disinformation agent, so be careful. For example, you don't hear Tim Burchett talking about, and send me hate mail because of this. You don't hear Tim Burchett talking about Lou Elizondo, because Lou Elizondo was also a disinformation agent. I'm not saying Lou's wrong. We all love Lou Elizondo, but you, as a representative in Congress, you got to be super careful who you give credibility to, and anyone who's at least any way controversial, whether it's true or false, you have to steer clear of. And I think
Yeah.
Burchett will do that. Let's hope he does, because if he
Let's
doesn't,
hope he
yeah,
does.
this will
Well,
be bad.
it's you definitely know they're not going to allow these hearings to just happen without attempting to derail them. So you know for
Oh
sure
yeah,
there's a campaign going on behind the scenes, and where those instances pop up, we have to be aware of those and alert, because we've had a bunch of things leading up to this point in the last week that you could consider attempts to derail what's going on. So, with that being said, I think we spent enough time with that. I just had to cover that. So we'll go ahead and get out of the news so we can get into our main topic here. All right. And I want to definitely say what's up to Cashew. Gave shout out earlier, and we'll give another shout out to David Divine Broadcasted. I went over there the other day. It was a great show. Those guys got a lot of good stuff going on, and I was invited by our good friend Cashew. So appreciate that. And I'm going to go ahead and get into our
Ask the Chat.
So, chat, I'm going to ask you before we jump into this, is we're going to cover, in consciousness, this thing can get deep. And I kind of want to get you guys to get involved with this because I know everybody has an opinion and feeling on how consciousness ties in to this whole ufology or UFO movement. And, there's a list of things that we could talk about. So the question that we have is, what's an experience you've had related to consciousness? And you can put that in the chat now. You can put it in a little later. And once we wrap it up, we'll go ahead and go through all those comments. So just like Dave says, it'd be nice if you put it in caps just so it's easier to go back through when we run through the chat. So jumping into our first topic here, or first segment of this topic, is going to be with consciousness. Actually, what I have here, let me do this first because I want to, we're having a theoretical talk on consciousness, but I want to jump it off with science. I want to jump it off with, the knowledge that has been grown on the topic of consciousness up to this point. So we'll listen to Edgar Mitchell, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. So let's take a look here.
So I'm going to read this. Buckminster Fuller wrote, if you want to understand the human condition, you must first understand the universe. But a great mystic will say, if you want to understand the universe, you must first understand the self. And they're both right. Because the evidence suggests that we live in a universe that is a self-organizing, intelligent, creative, trial and error, interactive, learning, participatory, informationally, non-locally, interconnected, evolving quantum system. And we spent quite a bit of time in the last 30 years in my New Age Foundation and others. There's a lot of people jumped on this bandwagon here in the last 15 to 20 years and validated much of what is just presented on this slide and in some detail. So we live in a living, evolving, intelligent universe. We're a part of it. We cannot be separated from it, and are all interconnected with the entire system. And that's because we're all made out of matter. And all of the matter comes from that basic energy source we call the zero-point energy field. And we now can even write some of the equations as to how that energy turns into matter, but we still don't know how to mine it or how to create the technology to extract that energy. And that's one of the goals that my team is working on. And the question of consciousness is still not well defined or understood. Had been denied as a proper study for science for 400 years, with the mind treated as a black box, and it cannot be directly detected with instrumentation. The hard problem of consciousness is, can physical brain structures create subjective experience? And that's the question that is posed, is what is really the hard problem of consciousness. How does the brain structure create these inner experiences that we know we have, but is it being created by the brain, or is there more to it than that? Mainstream science is the emergence of mind from brain has never been observed. Alternative explanations have not been considered, and the scientific method has not really been rigorously applied in answering that sort of question. But we're getting closer and closer to trying to find a tentative answer to that. So where is consciousness? Clinical evidence does not prove that the brain produced consciousness. It only shows that consciousness is associated with it. Many well-documented cases, people had detailed about subsequently recalled experiences while they were seemingly clinically dead. And by that we mean a flat EEG in modern terminology. And those are called OBEs and NDEs, out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, which in studying those, the person apparently, according to medical standard, is clinically dead, but has survived, recall these types of consciousness experiences while presumably dead. That's just telling us something we don't really know how to explain at this point.
Yeah, so Edgar Mitchell, man, he's really deep on the subject. I watched a few of his lectures. I really didn't know that he was really into consciousness that way. Yeah, oh my God, he goes so deep. So I did take some of the
in aeronautics,
exactly,
and astronautics, and I honestly never knew that, Rob. You always bring up this great stuff, man. I don't know where you
man.
find it.
I was
That's
shocked
special.
too.
I mean,
Yeah,
and his first slide was magnificent. It captured
exactly.
all the bullet points in my mind of what consciousness is and what we think it is. And anyhow, not to interrupt you, I'm just
No,
marking that
that's why
positive
I put
bias.
that together, because I wanted to get it started based in science
Yeah.
and before we jump into the theoretical, because us as just normal humans who don't study, he's been studying that at that point, he stated, for like 30 years, 40 years on that topic and still hadn't figured it out. So, the average person, obviously, we have our own idea of what we think consciousness is. So I wanted to get it started based in science and get those good bullet points from Dr. Edgar Mitchell, so we could jump into more of the ufology side of it. So what I want to do, I'm going to run through a couple things that I have down here, and I'm going to show you some interesting things, and then we'll kind of theorize on some of the actual topics that relate directly to ufology. So with that being said, what is consciousness? Consciousness is like a light in our minds, helping us know we exist and what's happening around us. It's like a window that lets us experience emotions like happiness, fear, and love, as well as think about things and make choices. For humans, it comes from the brain where lots of tiny connections work together. You think about consciousness in animals. Are animals conscious? This is something that people ask all the time. They seem to be aware. I know my Chihuahua seems to be aware and can recognize me when I walk in the room and jumps all over me. So animals, like our pets or wild creatures, might have consciousness. They can feel things, solve problems, and even recognize themselves in the mirrors. Some animals show care for their family members, like myself, showing that they might have emotions too. Scientists study their behaviors and brains to learn more about this mysterious consciousness. There's consciousness potentially in microorganisms, so something as small as a microorganism potentially could have a consciousness. So even tiny living things like bacteria and amoebas might have some sort of consciousness. They can sense their environment and make decisions to survive. Now, for example, they move away from harmful substances, showing signs of awareness, though it may be different from how we actually understand it. And then one that kind of surprised me, but really didn't: consciousness in plants. So, though it's harder to see, plants might have a simple form of consciousness too. They respond to sunlight, water, and touch. When you give them attention and care, they grow healthier. While their consciousness might not be like ours, they still sense and react to their surroundings in a unique way. Now, Mateo, I'm a plant guy. I grow a lot of plants, and have you grown plants? Have you noticed how they will move themselves to kind of reach for the sun, and if they're sort of wilted, they react instantly when you give them water. They kind of pep back up. They kind of come back to life. Have you ever noticed that?
All the time. I don't claim to be a plant
A
person,
botanist.
a botanist, horticulturist, or whatever you call it at all. But I do agree, and I have read and seen many a documentary on how plants respond to music. Plants respond to positive music, not negative music. I think I've even seen documentaries where they played like angry music versus positive music, and they were able to prove experimentally that the plants responded better to the positive, more loving type music as opposed to the negative, hateful type music. And as Maggie M10 said in the chat, she talks to the plants, and I heard that all the time. Here's another little tidbit for those who've ever read the book from James Redfield. I may have the name wrong. Celestine Prophecy. If you ever heard of that book, The Celestine Prophecy, where they
No.
talk about, the book is basically about happenstance and how every person you meet and every event in your life is actually connecting you to the next event. In that book and in the movie, they talk about the aura that was around plant life and just nature in general. And I'm a big believer in that. I think that there's a life energy associated, and we'll get into that more when we talk about consciousness in humans. But I
Mm-hmm.
believe there's a life energy in the plants as well, and in our domesticated animals that we call pets. I believe there's a life energy there that's comparable, and we're all connected in that by that.
I'm going to blow your mind right now.
Uh-oh.
I'm about to blow your mind. Okay.
I'm
When
ready.
it comes down to plants, I'm going to show you something that blew me away when I saw this, and I think it'll blow you away too.
Okay.
So, plants potentially having consciousness, and we may have some proof of that right here. Check it out.
And this is a plant that's found in Central America and South America, and it has behaviors. And the first behavior I'm going to show you is if I touch the leaves here, you get to see that the leaves tend to curl up. And then the second behavior is, if I tap the leaf, the entire branch seems to fall down. So why does it do that? It's not really known to science. One of the reasons why could be that it scares away insects or it looks less appealing to herbivores. But how does it do that? Now that's interesting. We can do an experiment to find out. So what we're going to do now, just like I recorded the electrical potential from my body, we're going to record the electrical potential from this plant right here, this mimosa. And so what we're going to do is I've got a wire wrapped around the stem, and I've got the ground electrode where? In the ground. It's an electrical engineering joke. All right. So all right, so I'm going to go ahead and tap the leaf here, and I want you to look at the electrical recording that we're going to see inside the plant. Whoa, it is so big. I got to scale it down. All right. So what is that? That is an action potential that's happening inside the plant. Why was it happening? Because it wanted to move, right? And so when I hit the touch receptors, it sent a voltage all the way down to the end of the stem, which caused it to move. And now in our arms, we would move our muscles, but in the plant doesn't have muscles. What it has are water inside the cells, and when the voltage hits it, it opens up, releases the water, changes the shape of the cells, and the leaf falls. Okay, so here we see an action potential encoding information to move, all right? But can it do more? So let's go to find out. We're going to go to our good friend, the Venus flytrap here, and we're going to take a look at what happens inside the leaf when a fly lands on here. So I'm going to pretend to be a fly right now, and here's my Venus flytrap. And inside the leaf, you're going to notice that there are 3 little hairs here, and those are trigger hairs. And so when a fly lands, I'm going to touch one of the hairs right now. Ready? 1, 2, 3. What do we get? We get a beautiful action potential. However, the fly trap doesn't close. And to understand why that is, we need to know a little bit more about the behavior of the fly trap. And number one is that it takes a long time to open the traps back up, about 24 to 48 hours if there's no fly inside of it. And so it takes a lot of energy. And number two, it doesn't need to eat that many flies throughout the year. It only needs to eat a handful. It gets most of its energy from the sun. It's just trying to replace some nutrients in the ground with the flies. And the third thing is, it only closes the traps a handful of times until that trap dies. So therefore, it wants to make really darn sure that there's a meal inside of it before the fly trap snaps shut. So how does it do that? It counts the number of seconds between successive touching of those hairs. And so the idea is that there's a high probability if there's a fly inside of there that they're going to be quick together. And so when it gets the first action potential, it starts counting 1, 2, and if it gets to 20 and it doesn't fire again, then it's not going to close. But if it does it within there, then the fly trap will close. So we're going to go back now. I'm going to touch the Venus flytrap again. I've been talking for more than 20 seconds. So we can see what happens when I touch the hair a second time. So what do we get? We get a second action potential, but again, the leaf doesn't close. So now if I go back in there, and then if I'm a fly moving around, I'm going to be touching the leaf a few times. I'm going to go and brush it a few times. And immediately, the fly trap closes. So here we're seeing the fly trap actually doing a computation. It's determining if there's a fly inside the trap, and then it closes. So let's go back to our original question. Do plants have brains? Well, the answer is no. There's no brains in here. There's not no axons, no neurons. It doesn't get depressed. It doesn't want to know what the Tiger score is. It doesn't have self-actualization problems. But what it does have is something that's very similar to us, which is the ability to communicate using electricity. It just uses slightly different ions than we do, but it's actually doing the same thing. So just to show you the ubiquitous nature of these action potentials, we saw it in the Venus flytrap. We've seen an action potential in the mimosa. We've even seen an action potential in a human. Now, this is the euro of the brain. It's the way that all information is passed. And so what we can do is we can use those action potentials to pass information between species of plants. And so this is our interspecies plant-to-plant communicator. And what we've done is we've created a brand new experiment where we're going to record the action potential from a Venus flytrap, and we're going to send it into the sensitive mimosa. So I want you to recall what happens when we touch the leaves of the mimosa. It has touch receptors that are sending that information back down in the form of an action potential. And so what would happen if we took the action potential from the Venus flytrap and sent it into all the stems of the mimosa. We should be able to create the behavior of the mimosas without actually touching it ourselves. And so, if you allow me, I'm going to go ahead and trigger this mimosa right now by touching on the hairs of the Venus flytrap. So we're going to send information about touch from one plant to another. So there you see it.
Wow.
Amazing, amazing, right? Crazy, crazy. So when you get to thinking about consciousness and the energy that is us, it doesn't just it's just not subjected to us. It involves or encompasses so many other things that you really wouldn't even think that it does. So when you get into consciousness, it's a something that we truly don't understand, but we know it encompasses a whole lot of potentially everything. And I'm going to get into some points. What did you think about that? Isn't that crazy?
That was good. I have to comment on the electrical engineering joke,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
very bad, but that's okay. I'll forgive him. When it takes one to know one, so that was a silly joke. But no, here's seriously the ground. The fact that the plants use electricity to communicate, like we have bioelectric activity going on in us all day, every day, right? That's our nervous system. It's all bioelectric. Our brain, my mouth moving right now and hands moving, it's all part of that. And it's all tied together. And so that's the physiological side of life, right? Be it a plant, animal, whatever. What and consciousness, I think, and you'll get into this more, but my view is that's what lies beyond the physiological. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I'll throw this out. I view, since I'm an electrical engineer, I have to use an analogy that resonates with me. I kind of view the electricity and what we have going on in us and in the plants as a transmitter, and consciousness is this field that receives it. And what do radios do? Like the two plants, they can communicate with each other. In this case, it was through wires, but radios communicate through the air, right? Across the whole planet if you have the right type of radio. Why can't we animals do that? Is that what consciousness is? Does it
Right.
span further? So I that's my view, and I'm a big believer in that. And it's my take. And I have never seen this experiment before, Rob. Once again, great stuff you bring to
That
light. Teach us a lot.
that's but that's what I mean. I mean, it's something that we don't understand. So when it gets down to it, electricity, the
Uh-oh.
electricity that's in all of us, the
Hold on, Rob.
consciousness,
We
this
gotta, we gotta.
the,
The chat is telling us that the stream says unavailable, suspended for privacy violations.
I'm looking at it
Oh,
right
it's back
now.
now. She said, Maggie M10 says it's back now.
Okay, okay, they might have not have liked the last clip we played then.
Yeah, I guess the rule is you have to only show 30 seconds and then talk about it, and then you can keep going. So we're
It's
back.
all we're back. We're back. So yeah,
Everybody,
okay.
go find somebody else who's causing trouble on the internet. Leave us alone.
So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and still continue as if nothing ever happened. So let me see here. So let's get in. But it's crazy, right? So
Yeah.
we don't understand what it is. We don't understand what consciousness is. It's this mysterious thing. But even a plant can react to something like to touch. So what other things in the universe are interconnected in that way? So consciousness, just so you know, enables awareness in all living things, not limited to humans. Universal energy, like invisible threads, may be connected to consciousness in the universe. Consciousness is compared to ripples in an endless sea, linking all living beings to each other and the cosmos. All consciousnesses are like threads weaving an interconnected fabric of experiences and emotions. Communications through consciousness is mysterious but may involve nonverbal, intuitive connections. The universe's energy field flows through all living things, connecting them to one another and the cosmos. Different beliefs offer diverse perspectives on consciousness after death, some considering it transcending physical existence. Interconnected consciousness suggests a deep unity among all living things, all living beings, and the universe. The enigma of consciousness invites us to appreciate life's wonders and embrace the interconnectedness of all living things. So, some examples of consciousness as they pertain to ufology would be the first thing here, which would be CE5, right? So we all know what CE5 is. CE5 refers to human initiated contact with extraterrestrial beings through conscious and intentional means. This can involve meditation, visualization, and inviting peaceful interactions with potential extraterrestrial intelligence. So, for example, a group of individuals gathers in a remote location, meditates, and uses intention to communicate with possible extraterrestrial beings, hoping for a peaceful encounter. So it's something like what Dr. Stephen Greer claims to do when he takes people out for CE5 experiences. What do you think about CE5s? Would you do that, or what do you think? Do you think it's a thing, or how do you feel about that?
I think it's definitely a thing. I hate to say this, and we don't have strong biases here on the social dig, but Dr. Stephen Greer has some people love him, some people hate him, some people think he does what he does to collect money from people. And if I had the opportunity to go to one of his CE5 events and it didn't cost me, an arm and a leg, which is where the problem lies, I would definitely do it. But he does have an app, apparently, that's free, that kind of guides you through the process. And there are other people who have done it. Jay Anderson from Project Unity, a great YouTube channel that I'm sure a lot of our viewers know well of. You know well of, Rob. He talks about this a lot, and he's a big believer in it. I think it's definitely a thing. I mean, I haven't tried it per se to summon ET or UAP or UFOs to be visible, but that opportunity may still happen for me. I think it's certainly feasible, and I do think that if you have a group, it's kind of like a radio transmitter. Going back to that analogy I used earlier,
Mm-hmm.
the more power in your transmitter, the farther you reach, right? So me alone may not be able to get very far with my thought, but maybe a group of us all concentrating on the same thing might be able to reach and make something happen. So I think there's something there.
I do too. I feel like, in one, and I would try it. I would try, and I don't hold, obviously, just the fact that there's, when we talk about Dr. Stephen Greer, which he's done a lot of good things within ufology, but when it comes to the money part of it, I think it's something that we can all potentially learn to do ourselves for free. And it's just being that the energy or, what makes the universe go. And it's kind of hard to explain because everybody has their own perspective on what they feel like consciousness is. But if you were to ask me, I feel like it's the energy that makes us, the energy within us, which is why I showed the plant clip, because it just shows that electricity or that energy is in everything. So that the thing that sparks us and makes us go and move, you can find in other things as well. And I just feel like it's everywhere, and it's what moves the earth, it's what powers everything. And then going back to that potentially the earth itself could be in some ways conscious. And man, I guess more than likely it is, because they feel like, and I read something where they say with the plants, even though they don't have brains, they consider the equivalent of the brain to be the root system where it actually gathers all its information, and that's obviously planted into the earth. So, and then you hear a lot of people talk about going out with, taking your shoes off and going barefooted and kind of just connecting directly to the earth. And it's just, I think it's one, the energy is all encompassing. Do you know what I'm trying to say with that?
Absolutely. The physical contact allows you to connect to that energy more
Almost like
readily.
grounding yourself. Yeah, exactly.
No,
So,
it's physiological for sure. And I agree with that.
and using that though for the CE5 contact, I think is kind of how it happens. Like you're just reaching out into that energy, and it's interconnected with everything out there. But that's just obviously how I feel about it. But the next one would be remote viewing. And I think this could be possible. I know a lot of people lean in on this one here, but with remote viewing, for those who may not know, is a psychic ability that allows individuals to perceive information about a distant or unseen target using their mind's eye without being physically present at the location. So, for example, a trained remote viewer is given a set of coordinates without knowing what the target is, and they use their psychic abilities to describe the details and features of that location accurately. So I know I've heard of people being able to do that and do that with accuracy. What do you know about that?
Well, you're going to touch on this later in the show in your Once Upon a Time segment, so I won't give
Mm-hmm.
it away, but I agree. And there were huge government programs on this, Rob. And some of the people in UFO lore that we all know, like Hal Puthoff, even Richard Dolan's wife was big into remote viewing and was
I
part of
didn't know that.
programs.
Okay.
Yes, and so I think this was real, and in fact, the government treated it very seriously in the 70s. And recently, we had Uri Geller come out again with some discussions that he had. But Uri Geller was actually brought in on this too. Now he was more of the psychic, but he got pulled into some of those remote viewing programs. So I think there was a lot of evidence here, and you'll talk about it later in some of the actual examples, but there's a lot of evidence that the government has on this. And one would think, why would the government have spent all his money and done all his work with all these people? And why would there be documentation that we've been able to FOIA to see about it? Why would they have done that for more than like a year if there wasn't anything there?
Yeah, it's almost like there's something that they know.
There was something there.
Yeah, something, and that makes sense when you point that out. That it
Yeah.
definitely makes sense. Now, the next one that we have on our list is channeling. And this is another thing that I've heard, and like I said, just with the basis where we're starting off with what we saw from Dr. Edgar Mitchell, his presentation, and then the plant demonstration. I believe all these things we're going to end up touching on are for sure plausible things. So, with channeling, for those who may not know, channeling is the process of an individual allowing a non physical entity or consciousness to communicate through them, sharing information and wisdom. For example, a person enters a meditative state and allows a spiritual entity to speak through them, conveying messages of guidance and inspiration to others. So, what is your view on channeling?
Channeling, I don't have a lot of familiarity with, and I'll be honest, in the past, whenever presented with someone who claims to be a channeling person, I have met that with some skepticism because once again, it's hard to gauge whether or not they're telling the truth and if they're fabricating all of that. So I have a little trouble with channeling. Remote viewing is was different because it was investigated by the government for quite a period of time and may still be getting used. Channeling, I think the problem with channeling is even if it is legitimate, there have been too many illegitimate people in that field that have given it kind of a bad.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Because and I'll say that because obviously we're doing middle of the road here, but we
Oh yeah.
personally have dealt, me and you personally, we dealt with a channeler
Chandler.
who
Yeah.
was who ended up making pretty outlandish claims. And I think it's a shame though, because
Yes.
when you have people like that channeler that we're talking about, a reptilian channeler at that, um, just it gets real tricky because this channeler was telling us that don't you can't trust these channelers, none of these other, and it was just a weird thing, a weird
Yeah.
feeling. So I just hate when you have people like that that aren't authentic because they overshadow people who actually may have the ability to do something
Right.
like this.
And that's
So
probably why I don't know more, because I'm too, the truth is so obscured and by the fakers out there that I don't go, I haven't gone deep enough. And like if you and I ever found somebody, let's say you found somebody and you researched it and I could look at it too, that would be great, but it's hard to see the forest for the trees when it comes to channeling.
yeah, and it's sad, and I guess that may be essentially because it was the first time dealing with the channeler and not knowing, you know what I mean. So you're kind of jaded from that, and I think
Hmm.
that's pretty much what it was. But yeah, I think that it's definitely possible to do if you can absorb energy, or we're all receptors, and if you have the ability to receive energy, then I believe it's possible. I mean, our bodies are conductive to electricity, so it's very, very possible, very,
Hey,
very possible.
we can transmit, we believe that CE5 is real. We talked about that as your item number one. Channeling is just the opposite direction, right?
And I'll give you another example. So
So it's not that far-fetched, and I'm not ruling it out. It's just it's
you know
unfortunate.
back in the day, what type of fillings were they using for their teeth where they were able to actually pick up radio frequencies? I don't know what material that was.
What are you talking about?
For mouth fillings, teeth, your fillings in your teeth.
Oh, the silver in
It
your
was a silver. It was a
yeah.
certain type of filling material that they used to use back in like the 50s, 40s, and they would claim that they were able to actually pick up radio frequencies that you could hear through that. So I thought that was
Steven
pretty
says
crazy.
mercury in the chat. Yeah,
Mercury, okay,
be tough because that's kind of toxic and it doesn't solidify. But
okay,
I know that, I grew up with silver fillings until I got them replaced with porcelain ones. But I've heard of cases that where the metal in the mouth acts as like an antenna and people
yeah,
pick stuff up.
yeah.
And then
You're
I guess it's
receiving
tied into your
frequencies.
nerves in your teeth and gets into your head. Maybe if they tuned it just right, you could, if it was arranged just right, you could pick something up.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd be open to it. I'd be open to it. I'd be willing to give a different channeler an opportunity to show me that what was,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think that's where that lays. But the next one that we have is actually telepathy, which telepathy is the purported ability to transmit thoughts, emotions, or information directly from one person's mind to another without any conventional means of communication. So, example, identical twins claim they can understand each other's thoughts and emotions without speaking or using any visible cues. And obviously, with telepathy, you get into like the abductees and the CE4 experiencers that talk about how ETs use telepathy, during is their form of communication. So, and I'm with the experiencers on that because we know these things are in the sky. We know aerial school, they landed, they got out. Even if you want to go off the Las Vegas alien, they get out the ships. And then telepathy, could definitely be a form of communication. Obviously, I haven't experienced it myself, but once again, it's when you think about the energy. This that's why all these things make sense, because then it makes all these things plausible. So, what do you think about that?
I know that aerial school incident's one of your favorites, Robs, and I absolutely love that incident. And those children, especially the ones that the Harvard psychiatrist examined, his name escapes me right now, but Mack, I believe his name, John Mack.
Yep,
He
John
he
Mack.
he. Those kids got a message, and kids don't talk about the welfare of humanity. I don't care where they're from. They were from Central Africa, South Africa area. It wouldn't matter where they are. Kids that age don't have a clue about the welfare of humanity, nor does that interest them. But
Right.
that's what those kids walked away with. They walked away with that message, and they said they didn't the alien didn't speak at them, it made them feel that. So I'm a big believer in telepathy. I think it works. Your example about the identical twins, why does that happen? Physiologically, the identical twins are, to use another engineering term, they're on the same frequency, literally, physiologically. So that's why the identical twins have an unfair advantage for telepathy with each other, because they're already tuned in. Like you and I can't do telepathy well because, we're not on the same frequency. But maybe you and your mother know what each other are thinking, right? Or me and one of my relatives knows what I'm thinking more aptly because we're closer on the same physiological frequency. Now, the aliens, the ETs, maybe they've gone way beyond that and they can reach everybody because they figured out how to do it. And I think, shoot, that's telepathy, like the alien interview we watched earlier. That was all telepathic, right?
And that's the thing. It's I think that we all have I think there's I talked to someone. I told you about a guy that I met out when I was on vacation. I walked up to the hotel. He just happened to be sitting outside, and I took a moment to go in, and he just came up and started talking to me and started talking about all these sorts of things. And his energy was like match minds, and it was crazy. And we talked about a lot of those things. One of the things that we talked about was the term unlocking your mind. And I feel like that's a big thing. Like some people some people are born with their minds unlocked, like creatives. Like I feel like myself, I'm a creative, and I feel like most creatives are born with their minds unlocked. Same thing with, I think, like geniuses and things like that. But I think you have like hive minds that their minds are actually locked until they find the ability to unlock them. And I guess that might tie into like the DMTs and things like that, the tools that people use to actually unlock their mind. And I think once you have learned to do that, that you potentially have those psychic capabilities too, the telepathy and all those things too. Like we all have it. You just have to learn how to unlock your mind. At least that's how I feel. And I've talked to a few different people. We both talked to the paranormal lady. You remember the paranormal lady we
Yes.
spoke to? Okay. And then we talked about, I asked her if part of her being able to speak to the paranormal had to do with like some level of a psychic ability. And she said, yeah, actually. And then I followed that up with, is it something potentially that we all have the capability of doing? And she said, yes. So, yeah, I mean,
I
it's one
agree
of
with
those things. So I think we could all do that. But getting on to the next one, we have lucid dreams. And now this is a big one for me
that.
because I have have you ever had, and actually, let me just read it first.
Go for it.
Lucid dreams are dreams in which the dreamer becomes aware that they are dreaming and may have had some degree of control over the dream's content. So, for example, during a dream, a person suddenly realizes that they are dreaming and decides to fly or change the dream storyline consciously. So, I've had those sorts of dreams where when I'm there, I feel like I'm there, and I'm able to do all these. If I want to fly, I'm able to fly. If I want to do this, I'm able to do this. And the reality, the way it seems so real, and the ability to go back to those same places is a thing that I wonder if your consciousness is actually going to those places. You know what I mean? So when you get into consciousness, is your consciousness leaving your body at that point and then going to these locations? And that's a question that I always have. Don't know if we'll ever be able to answer that, but it feels that way because if you go, and I don't know if you've had this, but when you go to that place, it's exactly as you remembered it before. And I think it's a crazy thing. And it's just one of those things I've always wondered about. What do you think about that?
That's cool, and I think we should ask the chat on this one. I'll say for me,
Ask the chat.
I haven't had one like that where it was a repeat occurrence. Maybe I've had something close to that, but not much. I'm not a big dreamer, I guess. But I wonder if everybody in the chat have had something like that. Let's see what
Forrest
people have to
Louis.
say.
Forrest
Louis
Louis
says,
says he has had many lucid dreams,
yep.
sleep subliminals,
Maggie
and
M10 says yes, weird ones. I was also conscious in my own room and trying to wake my husband up and get back in my body.
yeah, yeah.
That
I
can
mean,
be
because
scary, yeah.
it feels that real. I mean, have you not experienced a dream like that, Mateo?
Not really. Every dream that I've had, I never felt like I was in control of, or I didn't come to the realization I was dreaming in the dream, which is obviously part of that, where you feel like you're now in it. More of my dreams tend to be more disjointed and confusing, and the few dreams that I have, which are very rare, that I can actually remember that pseudo sort of made sense.
Mm.
Are few and far between for me. I don't know why. Maybe I'm brain dead and I don't know.
No, I'm gonna tell you, I have, and it doesn't happen all the time, and that's the thing. Like, there has been a dream, and I've had recently where I'll have the same dream or go to the same location for about a week straight, or maybe 2 weeks straight, and then it won't happen. I won't have that type of dream for some years. So the ones that I've had recently, I hadn't had these dreams for about close to 10 years, but I went back. When I did have these dreams, I went back to the exact location, the same from what I remember from 10 years ago. I mean, street for street, like everything was exactly the same. And these are dreams that, yeah, there are some that I have that are like normal dreams where I wake up and I can't remember anything, or I do remember, but within 10 minutes I forgot. But these dreams, I wake up and I go tell my girl, I'm like, let me tell you what just happened in this dream. Like, I gotta tell somebody what just happened in this dream. It was crazy. And I'm
Was the
sitting up.
streets and the stuff that you said you saw, were they part of a place you used to live, or was it some
No,
fictional place that was
some
always constructed the same way whenever you
some
went back?
fictional place that was constructed exactly the same. So
Wow.
almost like the Matrix, right?
Oh, so you were
You know
going
when
to like
Neo
a place.
plugs in and he goes back to that wherever
Yeah, yeah.
it's just like that, where these are actual streets, actual places,
Maybe it is a real place.
structures, and that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
See, my theory is, but obviously I don't think it's anywhere here on Earth, though. I think it's somewhere else. I think it sounds wild, I'm sure, when you talk about it, but it feels like the consciousness is leaving you and is going physically to that place, and you're there. And that's all I could say. I mean, obviously, we don't know, and we'll probably never know how this all actually works. But
Let me throw this idea at you. Combining, let me go back to your list here. I have the liberty or the advantage of your show notes. Item number 2, remote viewing, and here we are in item 5, lucid dreams. Could a lucid dream be a remote viewing incident that you had that came about in your sleep? Remote viewers, of course, can what's the word? Bring that about, for kind of force it to happen, or they can summon it
that's a
to
tough
happen
one.
while they're conscious and awake.
Yeah.
Maybe like a remote viewer, your a lucid dream is you are in the other place, like a remote viewer would do, right? When they say the remote viewer, we want you to look and see what's going on at this missile base in Russia, let's say. Maybe the lucid dream is kind of a different form of that, where you can't summon that behavior while you're awake, but it happens to some of us while we sleep because of, once again, that fabric of consciousness that's out there where everything is all connected. Maybe you're tapping in. I'm just saying,
No,
it's a
it's
different
something.
form of the same
What I
thing.
think, there you go. It's a different form of the
It's the
same
same thing.
thing. I think that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Now,
Just dawned on me. I thought I'd throw that out there for food for thought.
Maggie says to wonder what makes some dreams set as a memory as though it really happened. She's had some profound dreams that she still remembers in great detail. That's me, Maggie. That's exactly what I experienced, and because you could have you would think, and your mind is capable of taking you to a different place this time, but instead it's taking you back to the same exact place. And that's the crazy thing, because you could conjure up a whole new location to dream it
Right.
to land in, but you're landing in the same place as before. For as Louis says, he believes it's a dimensional spirit travel. That could be a thing right there. I could go with that for sure. Christine says, I did have a space dream recently. I was being trained to do something, and the planet was orange, and I said it was orange red like hell, and the person smirked. In the dream?
Apparently, yeah.
Jeez. Definitely never been to another planet. Maggie and 10. Definitely never been to another planet. Stood above miles and miles of huge black box with purple lightning jump between them. That's wild. I don't know if I've seen, if it's going that deep. I know I could fly every time though. Let me see.
I have had a few flying dreams. Those are always fun.
Fake planet, fake reality, because I can see broken lines or outlines of everything. That sounds like the Matrix right there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to it. I'll put it like that. I don't think all this happens just in your head, in your bed. I
No, there's
think
some connection going on
so,
outside.
you go somewhere else. So to and we'll get to another point here where that may be a thing where your consciousness actually leaves your body. You haven't seen Matrix yet, Christine? Oh no, you got to go. It's a great, and it really, if you want to get into the whole, when people say we're living in a matrix, yeah, you got to watch the movie. Then you'll understand that term when people say that, because you'll be like, yeah, we're living in a matrix. And you'll probably resonate with some of the things that you're seeing in that movie.
Mind twisting.
It is. It makes you think twice about what reality is. So the next one we have, which is also one that kills me too, is deja vu. So deja vu is the feeling of having experienced a situation or event before, even though it's occurring for the first time. Example, while visiting a new place, someone feels a strong sense of familiarity and feels like they have been there before despite never having visited the location. Have you experienced deja vu?
I have, and I could never explain it either. I mean, sometimes a deja vu is real because maybe you're doing something with somebody again that you haven't done in years, and it is a repeat performance. But I have had that happen and wonder why. I, this is
So,
when you this could connect to a lot of different things. I often wonder if are you connecting to someone else who was there at that another time, or was it you in a past life?
that's a
What
good
is it?
one.
Now that gets into a whole different realm, and that's a whole show by itself. But I never could explain it. What did you experience?
I when I get into deja vu, see, it says the feeling of having experienced a situation or event before, and that's kind of how you perceive it. Like, oh, did I think I've done this before? Did I do this? But I guess it could almost be perceived as like seeing the future. Like I saw this before. Like I saw this. What I'm doing now, what's happening now, but I saw it in the past. So now that's what triggers my deja vu, because now that I'm here in the present, I felt like I did this before, but maybe you actually had that vision previously, you know what I mean, in the past, and then it came to fruition, like it was some locked idea in your mind or some locked experience that wasn't on your front of your mind, and then you run into that experience and you say it triggers deja vu, but it's really something that you saw coming up
Right.
in the future.
That
Crazy, right? That's
that's
what that.
that's a possibility. Yeah, like you predicted it happening, and so it
Yes,
did already it is happening again, so to speak, because you had seen it, you had foreseen it.
yes, 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 yes.
Interesting.
Now I think that's what
It's a
deja vu
good
could be.
that's a good theory. I like that theory.
Yeah, that's what I feel like it could be. You see, we
Well,
got anything here? Um,
Christine was asking us the question, and you can answer. I answered her in the chat, but she's
let's
asking if you
see.
had more
You
as a
got some
kid or
more
as an
deja vu
adult.
skills, adult. Um, I think I've had it the same period. Like even to this day, I'll have a deja vu, and I'm like, man, that's deja vu. That's deja vu. So I don't think it was any more than when I was a child. And when I have deja vus now, I think there's something important I need to pay attention to or do correctly. Yeah, I would say so, because
That's a good
especially
point.
if it's something that you saw, that you conceived before, and then it's happening now, then may be something very important about
It's
that
important.
moment. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
He said it happened more as a teen or adult. You hardly have them now. Yeah, but I'm always thinking all the time, and I think that's my thing, because I just never stop thinking, and it takes me to a place where I end up having that experience more often. I think is what it is. Orez Toothbrush, welcome to the show. And so yeah, so that's deja vu. So we'll get into the next one. We have like couple more here. This one will be intuition. And I've
Hmm.
always felt about this one. So, intuition is a form of unconscious knowing or insight that provides a deep understanding or perception of a situation without relying on conscious reasoning. For example, a person meets someone new and immediately gets a gut feeling that they can trust or should avoid that person without any concrete evidence. So, intuition, have you experienced that? And what do you think that is?
Oh yeah. I mean, we all tell us always talk about what our gut is telling us, and I usually, as far as initial impressions, I'll probably make that judgment based upon the interaction. Although I think I've had intuition about people. I I tend, since I have to deal with a lot of technical decision making when it comes to my line of work, and I have to trade off 101 things. I'm always trying to rationalize it in a deductive, logical way. But I'll
Mm-hmm.
say this, my intuition made the decision before I even went through that line of thinking in order to deduce what the right answer should be. And I have to be, sometimes I have to be careful not to make it a self-fulfilling kind of thing. But I'll say that if I talk myself out of what my intuition said to do, even though I thought that the other way was the correct way, I'm usually wrong.
Yeah.
So I feel I have had intuition because and it's usually steering you right. So as the overly used saying goes, go with your gut.
Your gut. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Totally agree with that. Hey, Ores Toothbrush. And so, yeah, no, you're totally right about that. Go with your gut, that intuition, that first feeling. Say, go with your first mind. That's the same thing. And they say women's intuition, which I think's a real thing. I mean, throughout my life,
Oh yeah,
I've experienced that the women in my life have had this innate sense of intuition and more frequently. Like we have a gut feeling as males. And I don't know if because I never called it intuition, only with women because they just seem to know. They just seem to know every
I
time.
agree with that. Here's a theory on that. I think women are a little, men are tend to be a little more left brained, and women tend to be a little more right brained. And I think women are give themselves more freedom to allow the intuition to enter into their decision or into their mind. We men stop it because we're trying to logically deduce too much, right? And so I think women are better at reading intuition, and therefore, as you said, they'll offer it, and 9 times out of 10 they're spot on, right? So it's,
Maybe their frequencies are turned up a little higher too.
well, yeah, I think, like I said, it could be a physiological thing where our right brains are better receptors at what is to come.
Yeah.
As your theory was about deja vu being a foreseen event as opposed to a past event happening again. So maybe intuition is this ability to see, and oh, it is kind of the ability to see what's coming into the future, make a decision. And maybe that's more of a right brain thing. And women are better at it than men are just because they're wired that way to allow for it to happen. And men are less inclined. I believe that totally. And so the whole thing is you got to stay open minded about it and allow yourself to internalize those feelings and put them into the mix when you're trying to make a decision.
And here's the thing: when you think about it, I mean, we covered 7 of them so far. We still got a couple more to go. But when you think about it, all the ones that we covered, those are like powers that we have or abilities that we have as humans that not all of us have even learned how to tap into or even totally understand. And these are things that just show the power that we have and the untapped abilities that we have as humans, just on a conscious level, not even physical. And so it just blows your mind to just wonder what the possibilities are. And then maybe, and that's the other part of being, is that maybe when we do meet these ETs or get to understand where they're coming from, and then we unlock other capabilities, dude. Just imagine that. Imagine, for this is what we know, what we're going over from what we feel and experience. But
Yes.
imagine being able to unlock a whole nother part of the game where we're doing crazy things with our minds, and I think that kind of might be where we're heading. But
That's what they say, right? Telepathic people are using a greater percentage of their brain. Yeah, Christine's
Krista,
comment, she says, don't put it on the
that's
screen.
funny,
Yeah,
Christine.
yeah, I gotta laugh. No,
So
but
yeah, no.
so they're using a greater percentage of their brain, and we everyday people are not, and have the aliens or the ETs unlocked the ability of their physiological brain to a greater degree that enables them to do this all the time. And if so, if we could do that, maybe maybe you do become a real Uri Geller, someone who can has telekinesis and has
Well,
telepathy and remote viewing capability, all of the above.
that's all. That's what I say is the thing that separates the normal person from a genius is that they've learned or had the ability to unlock a part of the brain that we just were part of their consciousness and receivers that we haven't, the average person hasn't figured out how to do. But I think everybody can actually do that. And there's cases like and I'll just, before we move on, just point this one thing out, because I know in the past you've heard of like those children who have had like head injuries where they may fall and hit their head, and then they come to and somehow they're speaking a whole different language fluently. Like, where does that come
Where'd
from?
that
You know
come
what I
from?
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you reach out and do that? But it just shows that there's just way more to the mind than we even understand at this point. But the next one that we have is premonition. This kind of doubles over some of the ones we talked about, but premonitions are strong feelings, almost like intuition, but premonitions are strong feelings or visions about future events before they happen, often suggesting foreknowledge of an upcoming occurrence. For example, a person has had a vivid dream about a natural disaster and later learns that a similar event occurred in the exact location they dreamed of. That's deep. I know I've heard people say that they're able to do those things. If anybody in the chat, if you have ever had a premonition that ended up coming true, it's just a lot different than a prediction. It's more like a dream that you had, I guess, or you unconsciously had this vision, or unsolicited vision, I'll say, that ended up turning out to come true at some point in the future. That's pretty wild. What you think about that one?
I see a difference, or I see a difference between premonition and intuition. Intuition is
Well, like,
more like the feeling that you have when you're presented with a decision that you've got to make,
yeah,
whereas a premonition is like kind of out of the blue. You're not thinking about any particular decision about your future, and here comes this strong feeling that something's going to happen that you have to, maybe you will have to deal with directly. And this could tie into the people who make prophecies, right? And myths about what the future is going to do. Some of them are true, some of them are false, but there's been a lot of people who have made a name for themselves because of their prophecies, and that may be just a stronger version. Once again, they're tied into that fabric. And here's the thing about that fabric of consciousness, that power in the universe that we all believe is there.
hmm
It transcends, I think it transcends time. And it certainly transcends space, but maybe it also transcends time, in that maybe the past and the present, or the present and the future are out there in the in the realm of consciousness, and people who have premonitions are picking up those future events from that fabric of consciousness, and that's where that comes from. Because we all talk about, we're tying all this back into what we're dealing with here, which is ufology and ETs and alien life, and what it means to us here on planet Earth.
hmm
There's a lot of talk about interdimensional, interspatial, ultradimensional as being explanations for the ETs. And what does that really mean? Well, time is considered the fourth dimension. And if you were in the fourth dimension and you could walk around in it, right, past or present or future, like we walk around in our three-dimensional space, there you have it, right? You might be able to see what's going on ahead and have it, know it now. So I feel it's all once again tied into that one soup, if you will, of consciousness that's out there.
So I wonder, I mean, if you would consider potentially premonition is so a psychic ability, right? So do psychic, and I would love to ask a psychic this. Would psychics consider what they do, the visions that they have, to be premonitions, or do they have another term for that?
Mm,
Is it considered to be the same thing? I guess would be a
could
good
be,
question
depends
for a
on the
psychic.
psychic.
Yeah, yeah. I guess how they look at it actually, because they would understand what it is that they're doing more than I would, obviously. But looking at this, we have this one is a big one, and this is the last one on the list, which is out of body experiences, or OBE. Now this is wild because when you, as far, and let me just read it first. So the OBE refers to the sensation of separating from one's physical body and experiencing consciousness outside of it. For example, during a meditation session, the person feels as though they are floating above their body and observing their surroundings from a different vantage point. So, does your consciousness actually leave your body? And I guess if you base it off of what some people who've gone through that experience say, they say they've clearly looked down at their own body.
Their own
You've had
body.
people who
Abductees have said this.
as Dr. Edgar Mitchell said, people who have flatlined
Yep.
and people who have been clinically considered to be deceased and came back had their consciousness continued that entire time. And they were able to have experiences even while being clinically deceased, which I think is pretty amazing because it does show that your consciousness can potentially detach from your body. And I think that's a pretty crazy thing. So it would kind of lead more, and kind of back up the lucid dreaming and the idea of maybe your consciousness travels to these places,
Yes.
and maybe it travels throughout the universe, or who really knows on how that goes. And then with the CE5s in the channelers, and so I guess that all ties that back together, if that's a possible. I guess it is, because you've
It's
had
all related.
so many people that have had uh, out of body experiences that it has to be a thing. So pretty amazing, if you ask me. What do you think about that?
Totally agree. And I agree with you and how it's all connected to all of the other aspects or phenomena that are tied into consciousness. I mean, you bring up the near death experience people that Edgar Mitchell brought up. And then I've heard more than one abductee story where they said they saw themselves like left lying in their bed. So some abductions were more of an out of body experience than others, not all. Most people say that they go, both body and spirit into the craft are taken away, but sometimes you hear about it as an out of body. And
Yeah,
it's all part of the same thing, just a different manifestation, I think.
that's been my question all along, and I think we touched on this on the abduction show that we did.
Mm,
On is are you in an abductee? If there's anybody that's been an abductee, maybe you could chime in on this too. But are you physically abducted, or is it just your consciousness that's abducted? Because you have cases of being able, from reports, being able to travel through walls. They take you through walls, or is it both? Is it some are physically, and then some are just consciously abducted? That would be, something that it's a question I've always had, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like I would want to. Here's what I'd want to do. I'd want to be able to have a camera on someone that is being abducted, just happens to be abducted, to see if it's a state where the body remains there and then they have this experience, or if their body is physically moved or not. You know what I mean? What do you think?
I think that, well, say that a question one more time because I think I missed your point there. I was looking up
So
something.
no, so like if you had we have ring cameras in our house now, the all over inside your house. So if you had a camera on someone and it just happened to catch them having an abduction experience, would you see them physically be abducted? Or, so when they woke up the next day and they tell you about their abduction experience, you go back and review the video, would you see them physically be taken? Or would it be a situation where their consciousness was abducted and taken and their body remained there? You know what I mean?
That would, I guess, that would prove it, right? If the person
Yeah.
was just lying there, but they had an abduction experience, then yeah, they didn't. Their consciousness left, but their body remained. If their
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
is missing, then it was a physical abduction. So yeah, that would clearly prove it one way or the other.
Yeah.
I
But I'm wondering though if because an experiencers, will tell you that they felt they were physically taken,
yeah.
or maybe it was just a consciousness, so they would have an opinion on whether it was this or whether it was that. But being able, I would want to know if there had ever been a case, if someone
Caught it.
like, yeah, like, or if there was someone that was in the house, maybe came in and checked on you at night and saw you were still there in bed,
Mm.
but you experienced an abduction. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if we have any data on anything like that to be able to say either way.
I don't know of any data like anyone who's caught in a film. And as Christine in the chat pointed out, they would disable the camera, which isn't, it usually gets fuzzy anyway. But I don't
Yeah, I
know of
guess they
any
would.
abduction cases. Even like Whitley Strieber and his book and all the different books that were written. Leonard Stringfield, remember he interviewed a whole bunch of abductees way back in the 80s. He I don't know of any cases that were had any hard proof like that where the person was filmed to be physically missing.
Yeah, I mean, because I saw they had the story about, I think it was they had reported it was police officers. It was in New York, where they claimed they were at a vantage point where they observed this woman being abducted and saw her come through the wall of a high rise of a like a 5, 6 story building, come through the wall with the ETs in a beam going up to a ship. And I would just wonder if that would have been a case of being physically taken since you pass through a wall, or
Mm.
is it just a consciousness situation? But I guess we could record data because it happens all the time. I guess with cameras being present, or just the phenomenon being more in the public eye, I guess maybe we'll have situations where this may come to pass, where someone may be like, oh, well, I checked on you last night and I saw you sleeping all night, but the person says, no, I was abducted. Then we would know right there. So I guess
Mm.
it's just a matter of gathering data.
The consciousness abduction would solve the problem of being able to go through the walls, right?
it,
We
it
hear
would
that a
solve a
lot.
lot. It would solve a lot of problems,
It would
period,
solve that.
because
That's a common claim. And so if that's not possible, then not to say that it isn't possible, but if you put it aside, if you were just consciousness was abducted, then that could explain everything.
yeah, if you can have an out of body experience and view your body and you're
Hmm.
out of your body, then I would assume it would be just as easy to abduct your consciousness
Yep.
and leave your body behind. So And the same thing with the lucid dreaming or the, traveling to other places as you dream, your consciousness leaving your body. So it would make a lot of sense for it to be your consciousness that's abducted rather than the physical body being abducted. But
We can't rule out bodies because we all know about the hybridization program. So all of that aspect of abductions, which is of course a completely different topic for another show and a past show, you can't rule out the physical abductees because of all those claims, right? So anyhow,
says maybe a Geiger counter or some other instrument to measure environmental anomalies could be helpful, as opposed to cameras. There you go. Just some sort of something to measure the data. Yeah, exactly. That's a good one right there. That's what we need the community for. Exactly. So,
ideas.
okay. With that being said, so that's OBE. And then obviously we can just wrap it up with the Ask the Chat. And on this, do you think our consciousness is all interconnected? So I'll just say human beings, and we don't really have to go past that. But do you think that human beings are all interconnected through their consciousness? My answer would be, I think yes, because have you ever been, somewhere and you just feel like someone's looking at you, and then you turn around and they're looking at you dead in your face, and it's like the feeling that you received from that other person, through the air. And then same thing with with thinking, saying, "Hell, okay, I feel like that person likes me. I think, or I think that person hates me." Just the feeling that you get, without even talking. You know what I mean?
Yep,
So I think that all connects.
I agree. I think we're all interconnected, and our sense that we may not be is our inability to tap in. So we all of us don't have the same level of ability to tap into that consciousness all the time. Like the case you just gave may have been a particular instance where you were tapped in, where you were open to it, where you weren't fending it off in some way, shape, or form, right? Because we walk around with 1,000 thoughts in our head, and the moment we walked around where we didn't have any thoughts in our head was the moment we thought something was happening and we felt connected. I feel it's a matter of being tuned in to that consciousness, that realm that lies beyond, that I called the fabric or the soup. And if you're not tuned in, you don't sense it. But if you are tuned in, you see all the things that were on your list of 9 items.
Right. And Maggie makes a great point here, and this is definitely one thing that always happens. Says her mom is 12,000 miles away, and the amount of times at random times, say at 3 a.m., she called her, and her mother says, "I was just thinking of you." I know that happens all the time. And, that's definitely, I think that goes to the mother's instinct or the mother's intuition, where mothers can feel that something's going on with their child, and then they check in with their child, and I know that happens all the time.
It goes back to the physiological link that we talked about with the identical twins. I personally think that if the more physically alike you are, mother, child, sibling, twin, you're going to you're already at one step ahead as far as being able to attain that connection. That's
You're
my
already tuned. You're already
You're
tuned to
already
that.
tuned, and
Yeah,
that's
there you
why
go.
you have that exceptional connection. Whereas, like I was saying earlier, you and me, we may not be able to connect as readily because we're different from different families and different lineages,
Right,
and
right,
maybe our consciousness connection isn't as tuned in. Our radios aren't
right.
quite the same.
So you turn that dial to that right to that
Turn to the
frequency
right
once you get to
frequency.
know them,
Right.
and then
And
you're on their
tuned in.
frequency. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love it. I love it.
There's it always. I'm you know me. I'm always bringing the science back, like you did in the beginning.
Man, so I mean that
Cool stuff.
man, fun stuff. I'm glad we talked about it because, and I knew this topic or this subject is a rabbit hole, is really deep, and it can go even deeper than we've gone today. We kept it. We went kind of deep talking about this stuff, but it could go way deeper. We could have elaborated so far on each of those seven topics
Nine.
there.
You had nine things.
Or
Your list is
nine.
great, by the way.
Yeah.
Man. You did a nice job there. And I'm not just saying this because the audience is listening. You covered it well. I was like, man, this is a concise, this is a comprehensive list of all the main aspects of consciousness. I've never seen it listed out like that. So good stuff.
Yeah, no, and it's just the main aspects that we discuss just as average and normal humans. You know what I mean? It's not like Dr. Edgar Mitchell. He's on some real science. You know what I mean? And the neurons and we don't necessarily have to go that deep. Just on a personal human level, this is how we perceive consciousness to be, and these are the things that we talk about related to consciousness. So definitely, yeah. Now it's time to get into our once upon a time in ufology, and we usually tie all this together, which we'll also do today. And once upon a time in ufology, we are going to run with Project Stargate, right? Because how could you not? So, Project Stargate, or the Stargate Project, was a top secret program conducted by various U.S. government agencies, including the Defense Intelligence Agency, or DIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, and the U.S. Army from the 1970s to the 1990s. It aimed to explore the potential application of remote viewing for intelligence gathering purposes. The project's name, Stargate, was chosen to evoke the idea of opening doors to hidden information, much like a gateway to another realm of knowledge. The origins of the Stargate Project, can be traced back to the 1970s, when interest in paranormal phenomena, particularly remote viewing, gained some attention. Remote viewing is the alleged ability to access information about distant or unseen targets using extrasensory perception, or ESP, or psychic abilities. The government became intrigued by the possibility of using psychic individuals known as remote viewers to gather intelligence on Soviet activities and other national security concerns. The initial research into remote viewing was influenced by the work of individuals like Ingo Swann and Russell Targ, who claimed to possess psychic abilities. The project's early stages included conducting experiments with these individuals and other potential psychics to determine if remote viewing could be a reliable and useful intelligence tool. The remote viewers underwent rigorous training to enhance their supposed psychic abilities. They were given coordinates or specific targets, often without any prior knowledge of what they were meant to be perceiving. The remote viewers then attempted to mentally project themselves to designated locations, describing what they saw, felt, or sensed in their minds. The Stargate Project produced thousands of remote viewing sessions over the years. Proponents of the program claim that some of the information provided by remote viewers was accurate and valuable, leading to believe that remote viewing had potential as an untapped human ability. However, the Stargate Project also faced significant skepticism and criticism, where many scientists and skeptics argued that the results were inconsistent, subjective, and lacked robust scientific evidence. They questioned the validity of remote viewing as a reliable method of intelligence gathering, suggesting that the project was a pseudoscience without a solid empirical foundation. Despite the doubts, the U.S. government continued to fund the Stargate Project for several years, indicating a genuine interest in exploring unconventional approaches to national security. However, as time went on, the program faced increasing scrutiny and growing doubts about its effectiveness. In the mid-1990s, the Stargate Project came under further evaluation, and it was eventually terminated. The program's closure was largely due to a lack of convincing results and the changing priorities of intelligence agencies. While some remote viewers and supporters continue to advocate for the validity of remote viewing, the scientific consensus remains skeptical. So, Project Stargate, what do you think about Project Stargate?
Real deal, man. There's government documents to prove it happened, and we talked about it earlier when we went through remote viewing.
Yeah.
This was a serious undertaking, and there were a lot of players in that. And I remember, I think you and I spoke about, and I know you're going to hit a movie soon, but we also spoke about the movie Third Eye Spy, I think, it covered this program, which was another, if you watch that and see what these people did and what the hard facts were, how Puthoff was involved in it too, it's undeniable. I really find it hard to deny that this didn't happen and that the government took a serious interest. I think it's real.
Yeah. And Maggie M10 is just because it doesn't have a scientific explanation right now doesn't mean it will always be that way, in her honest opinion. True. Christine, fascinating. Forrest Louis says, why do you think they had TV show to desensitize the people? For sure. And that's what they use TV to desensitize us to a lot of different things, namely the alien invasion, if you want to say that, or, benevolent contact. We've been desensitized through, or fearmongered, actually, if you want to look at it, depending on which way you look at it.
Yep.
But yeah, those are all true statements. So with that being said, the Stargate project, we've already tapped into the human consciousness, or just consciousness in general, is something that we don't even fully understand, but we know that from what we do understand, that it's pretty powerful, it's pretty amazing, taps into so many different things. The possibilities are endless. We've only scratched the surface of it. So a Project Stargate, in my opinion, definitely something that could have worked. I actually heard there were, people that got a lot of things right during that program, even though there were some that got things wrong, but a lot of people that got things right. People who got things wrong maybe didn't have their frequency adjusted correctly. And there we go, right? So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our science fiction to science fact movie. And for this, we picked none other than The Men That Stare at Goats. The Men Who Stare at Goats, right? So let me give you a synopsis of this movie if you haven't seen it. Men Who Stare at Goats is a quirky and satirical comedy film that follows the journey of journalist Bob Wilton as he ventures into the world of military paranormal research after stumbling upon a former U.S. Army Special Forces soldier named Lynn Cassidy. Bob becomes intrigued by his claims of being part of a secret unit with extraordinary psychic abilities. As Lynn and Bob take on a wild and bizarre adventure, he recounts the origins of the New Earth Army, a military initiative designed to explore psychic phenomena for unconventional warfare purposes. Led by the eccentric and unconventional Bill Django, the New Earth Army sought to harness psychic abilities like remote viewing and mind control to achieve a more peaceful world. Throughout their journey, Bob and Lynn encounter a series of absurd and humorous situations, navigating the peculiarities of the New Earth Army's training methods and the characters they encounter along the way. With a mix of comedy and a touch of satire, Men Who Stare at Goats delves into the realms of unconventional military practices and the power potential of the human mind. The film humorously explores the line between reality and fantasy, inviting viewers to question the absurdities that sometimes exist within the world of classified government programs. As the story unfolds, it keeps the audience entertained with this witty dialogue, bizarre scenarios, and camaraderie between the characters as they embark on this extraordinary journey the self-discovery and military quirkiness. So, Menustered Goats. Have you seen the movie, Mattel?
I have not, but I am very
Oh,
familiar with it. And now that we've, as is always the case with the movies you pick, Rob, which are spot on, if you did see it before, if you watch it again now, given how consciousness is playing a role in the phenomenon and all that we all are interested in, I think it'll mean something different. I
yep.
think it does, and yeah, maybe this one has a little bit of comedy behind it, so it was a little um, less serious than like the movie like Third Eye Spy, which was more of a documentary. And but I think this is all for real. And you know how there's always these little elements of truth in all these movies, right? Even if they went off the deep end on a few things and it was a little bit more fanciful, like New Earth armies and stuff like that, you know, that may not be too far from the truth either, right? You never know what may have be actually going on the inside. No doubt, remote viewing was happening. We know that, and testing with psychics. But what did that lead to? I think, and just to make one point to tie it back into ufology a little bit more, I think the whole idea of trying to control people's consciousness or affect their consciousness
Right.
to instill a feeling or belief as opposed to just communicating is also on the minds of government and perhaps actively taking place with the ETs and the phenomenon itself. There have been some
Right.
claims that as we saw in that video, um, there is some claims that the government people may be getting influenced by the phenomenon to change their mind about certain things, right? So if you're in a position of power and ET wants to change your mind about certain things, I think they have the ability to do that. If they've got the ability to communicate telepathically and remote view and do all of these other things, I would not be at all surprised if you can affect somebody's thinking directly by imposing a thought, like make this person change their
Yeah.
mind. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's all true. And Men Who Stare at Goats, I know, goes down that path, and I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, it's a fun watch. It's a fun watch. It doesn't take itself too serious, but it does cover the what we covered on the Once Upon a Time in Ufology, which is the Project Stargate era and kind of what they were doing with that program is essentially what they're basing the story in this movie off of. So it's definitely a great watch. And like you said, it's all now that we're in this new paradigm shifting moment, looking through the new lenses that we're looking through now. That's why we have these movies set up this way, because you'll have a different perspective than if you've watched it before through these new lenses. So
Yep.
definitely something that we do all the time. We do on every episode. And yeah, that's science fiction, science fact movie edition this time. So what we'll do is go ahead and get out of this here, and then we'll go ahead and get ready to take it home. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for coming through, everybody. Let me go ahead and get us to the positive progression of humanity, because that's what we do it for each and every time we come through here on the Social Dig. And we totally appreciate you coming out, supporting the movement, and working your brain today. I feel like my brain was worked today. I feel like I picked up some good new information. It's always great to have deep conversations, and we'll do that from time to time here on the Social Dig. Let's see. Let's get in the chat. And Christine, thank you so much for coming. Maggie M10, appreciate you coming through. Magneticus Attractus, what's up, brother? Thanks for coming through. And let's Forrest Louis, appreciate your time. Thanks for coming through. And let's go back.
Cashew was here. I think
Cashew. Can't forget about Cashew. Cashew, thank you for coming through. Appreciate your time. O-Red's Toothbrush.
Yep.
Thank you for coming through. We go back because I don't want to miss anyone. I think I missed someone last time. I don't want to do that this time.
I think you got him.
Got everybody? Okay.
I think so.
All right. And then anybody else who did not comment today and watch the show, totally appreciate your time. We'll be doing another show on Tuesday. It was scheduled for Wednesday, but we're going to pull it for Tuesday, the day before the UFO hearing. And this one's going to be about the history of the government and UFOs. So long convoluted history leading up to this hearing coming up. This is still an ongoing story. So, it's something that we definitely want to talk about, definitely want to catalog, especially for anyone just coming into ufology or embracing this topic. They get to have a chance to understand where we've been with this, how long the government's been obfuscating this information, and now bringing up to date the steps we're taking to kind of break that and get up out of this rut that we've been in for the last 75 years. So with that being said, let me go ahead and give you guys a call in line because we want to activate, though. We could have did it today. I really wanted to have you guys verbally voice your opinion. So we're going to try it coming up soon. So put the number in your phone, call in line or message line is 856-843-3444 or 856-THE-DIG. It is a message line as well, so you can leave a message anytime. Today, you can leave one today if you have any thoughts about the topic today, any topics you might want to cover at a later time, any experiences that you want to get off your chest, and we'll go ahead and share those on an upcoming show. So once again, want to thank you guys for coming out today. My name is Mr. Rob G. I'm the host. We got Mateo, my guy right here, the engineer. Thanks for coming out, you guys. You guys all take care.